I'm Paul Wellborn with Wellborn Cabinet. I was born about a mile up the road here in Ashland, Alabama. We bought this piece of property, made cabinets here for the last 60 years. And I spent most of my life here, so I enjoy working with people, and I thank God for each and every one of them. And there's nothing more enjoyable than being here and helping people and working with those folks. They come here and do the job, and they do it with a smile.
The cabinet industry here in Ashland represents about 3/4 of the industry. And so if you close down the cabinet industry, you essentially close down Ashland.
Somewhere around 2015, our industry started looking and collecting data on the Chinese influx into our kitchen and bath industry. After the recession coming out of it, a lot of the manufacturers, domestic manufacturers, noticed that we were not gaining market share back like we would have thought we had with the economy coming out of one of the largest recessions since the Great Depression.
We were having to compete and cut our prices weekly. And so us and many other cabinet manufacturers were seeing the same thing happen. We knew eventually we would be driven out of business.
So we started collecting data and looking at it, and the Chinese, over about a 3-year period, had actually gained about 25% a year and gotten up to a total of about close to 40% of the total industry.
What we saw in the cabinet business is the same thing that I had seen happen through the late 90s and the year 2000. The Chinese come in and started making parts for the furniture business in this country. Eventually they started making the furniture complete and having our furniture companies to distribute. There's only a few furniture companies left in this country at this point in time. We did not want that to happen to the American cabinet manufacturers.
They've kind of got a standard MO of how they come in, and once they set their sights on an industry, they're not satisfied with 10, 20, or 30%. They want all of it.
They'll see an industry like ours, for instance, $10 billion industry, and they'll target it. And how they do that is they'll start making your labor-intensive items for less than you can buy the material for. Next thing you know, they're producing all of your product. The manufacturer here in America simply becomes the distributor of Chinese goods.
90% of the furniture is gone, manufacturing is gone from this country. As we know, probably that much or more of the apparel industry is gone. Some people say, well, we don't really need those jobs. Well, tell that to a family that just lost those jobs. Tell that to a single mother, and she's living in a small town, and she loses that job and loses those benefits, and now she has to move somewhere. So it's easy to sit back somewhere and say, well, we don't need that, but when it hits you and hits you at home or hits your community, then the impact's tremendous.
We're seeing manufacturing jobs go down from 20 million in the early 80s to less than 12 million now.
When China comes in, they undersell a market so low. If you carried your material cost and your labor cost to zero, which is impossible, you can't do that. You got to pay people and you got to buy material. Even if we done that, they were still under our prices by anywhere from 30 to 40%.
You might wonder why China cannot lower their cost like they do. It's because the Chinese government owns the processing plants. Cabinet manufacturing, furniture, they own it. So eventually, if they need to, they'll just keep dumping and lowering their price to whatever it needs to be.
Previous administrations were not as protective of domestic manufacturing in the past, and they allowed illegal trade practices from countries like China, Canada, Mexico, different countries to simply dump product and steal market share here in America.
People say, well, it's Chinese labor. It's not just Chinese labor cost is low. That's one aspect of it. The main part of the reason they're able to undersell is because of the illegal dumping side of it. When you're accusing a country of dumping product, you're saying that they're underselling the market at less cost than what they can actually manufacture for. So they're just trying to destroy an industry. They know they're not going to make any profits, but they undersell it until the domestic industry is gone, and then they raise their prices. And also the Chinese government subsidizes, and there's many ways to do that. And in this investigation, I think there was close to 40 different ways that the Chinese government was subsidizing the industry. Could be anything from paying their power bill, paying for the raw materials. Our trade laws allow what they call an ADCDV case. It's an anti-dumping countervailing duty case. And that's where the Department of Commerce and the ITC, the International Trade Commission, come in and they'll do an investigation. But there's several hurdles you have to meet as an industry. You've got to have at least 51% of the domestic producers in the industry to come together and agree on China being a problem, or any country for that matter being a problem. In this case, it was China.
Wellborn Cabinet has belonged to the Kitchen Cabinet Manufacturers Association for many years. With the kitchen cabinet business being attacked by the Chinese, we formed the AKCA, which is about 70% of the American kitchen cabinet manufacturers.
We had about 50 different manufacturers in our industry, and some of these were also suppliers to our industry that joined our coalition to fight this. We called it the American Kitchen Cabinet Alliance. You know, you got to prove that you have lost business and lost not just revenue, but also profits.
Many of these manufacturers and managers have been in the furniture business and knew what happened to the furniture business. So we all got together, many of us knowing what would happen in a few years to the cabinet industry.
It took over probably a year and a half to just gather that data to show that we had been injured. We petitioned the ITC and also the DOC, International Trade Commission, and the Department of Commerce. You got to win both to be able to have a case. You can actually win at one and lose at the other and not receive any help for your industry.
The DOC investigated and found that yes, they were dumping, and at the end, the ITC, the International Trade Commission, votes to determine whether there was injury after the DOC determines that there was dumping and subsidizing going on. The ITC did vote in our favor and awarded us a dumping and subsidies altogether, 59% duties against the Chinese. And what that means is any cabinet or cabinet component that they ship to America, 59% duties will be added to that goes into the U.S. Treasury.
What really needs to be stressed too, it was a 5-0 vote. Not always do you get a full vote by the commission. You look at it and you know there's 5 people that are actually going to make a decision based on hopefully the evidence, and they'll make a decision on basically the fate of your industry.
We're very thankful for Betsy Nance and the AKCA, Mayor Fettner, who came on board and went with us and spoke before the ITC. He was able to give it just that personal touch that a mayor has, that connection he has with the people. And he knows and understands what Wellborn Cabinet means to this community here in Ashland, Alabama.
I was humbled to be able to go and to speak for all the small town mayors. The impact that our industries have and in our local area, especially the cabinet industry, without it, we would just be a ghost town.
They made the right decision in a 5-0 vote that I personally think went a long way in saving our industry and all the 200,000 plus jobs in the kitchen cabinet industry across this country. China was definitely breaking our trade laws, and that's one thing that people do need to realize is our trade laws are set up to protect our domestic manufacturing, most of all our domestic jobs, and that's the critical part of this. And when someone violates it, we need to hold them accountable. It will give us an opportunity to compete, and that's all we're asking for. We're not asking, for any importing to be stopped. We're just asking for other countries to play by the same rules.
Fortunately, we won our case, and it's great. It's great for the 250,000 jobs in the kitchen cabinet manufacturing, because they would have gone the way of the furniture jobs and many other jobs. We've got to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. We need to protect our people, keep our wages up. We're working hard as we can every day to keep our people busy. We do it from the sawmill through the whole entire manufacturing process. We're so proud of our people and our families here. We want to continue doing this year in and year out.